Hi, and welcome to the Route to CISO podcast. It's me, Kris. I'm going to be your host, and I'm going to be chatting to seasoned Chief Information Security Officers about their career journeys. We're going to be unencrypting their real-life stories and searching for the hidden keys to help you fast-track your cybersecurity career. Here we are with Season 3, my second guest on here, another really good friend of mine, fellow Brit, Adam Robertson. Adam, nice to have you on board. Thank you, mate.
Thanks for having me, Kris. I feel like this is really the first Aussie-only edition, right? Because both of us always get mistaken as Aussies rather than English.
Totally. Yeah, we should put a couple of shrimps on the barbie before we started being. A couple of Fosters or something. I don't know. The famous, I don't know what it is. As you go west, when I first moved in was on the East Coast in New York, everybody knew I was British. And then as soon as I moved, Houston was pretty good for hearing the British accent. But then once I got over to LA and here, it's Australian Central, right?
Yeah. Do you get any other weird ones? Like random?
They'll go Australian, I'll go no. And they go New Zealand, I'll go no. And they're like, okay, sorry, South African. No. What about you? You had any unusual ones?
I'd say majority, I think more than 50% is Aussie, then a good amount English, and then you get that final 5%. I've had South African, and then one time someone said, "Hey, are you from Switzerland?" No. She said, "You sound like you're from Switzerland," and I thought, I don't know what a Swiss person sounds like, in all fairness. So they sound German, essentially. So yeah, I get some random ones, but mainly Aussie, then Brit. So not too bad.
That's such a random one, Switzerland. I tell you what, I got literally yesterday, and it threw me so much I didn't know how to reply to the person. He was like, "Are you from Georgia?" And I was like I was thinking like the country. Do you mean the country Georgia in Europe, or like literally Georgia? Like the state? And I was like, and he looked at me and he was like, yeah, didn't answer either way. And I was like, oh, I'm English. And then he was like, oh, okay. So I don't know where that came from.
Always good to get a random call out, isn't it?
Yeah, indeed. But mate, let's crack on with this. Thank you so much for chatting to me. We've known each other for years, but I know for sure we're going to find out a whole bunch more about your career, stuff that we just probably have never got round to talking about. You're obviously over at Virgin Galactic right now. Do you want to let everybody know what you're currently doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So my title is VP of Enterprise Technology and Information Security. I oversee the Enterprise Technology and Information Security departments. Pretty much anything and everything related to InfoSec rolls up to me at some point. We do collaboration with the risk department and legal department as expected. But yeah, that's my main responsibilities.
Nice. We've known each other for a while, but I think great place to start is back even before we knew each other, way back. Yeah, let's start at school and go up from there. What were you studying? What did you do first of all?
Yeah, sure. I grew up in Reading in Berkshire. I went to school there. I don't know what they're called these days, but I still call them GCSEs. I don't know if they've changed names, but yeah, aging ourselves here.
Yeah, we are.
So I went through the standard kind of UK school system through GCSEs, which is equivalent to probably what, sophomore year? Is it? No. Yeah, sophomore year.
Yeah, like what, we're 17, right? We're 17-year-olds.
16, 17, yeah. Then I stayed at my school and did A-levels, so sixth form college, A-levels, kind of nerdy stuff, math, physics, design, technology. And then after that, I just wanted to get into the workforce. I didn't go to uni. I ended up doing, what did I do first, actually? Can't even testing now. Did an apprenticeship. So I joined Nortel Network at the time, who were big back then. Right before the .com. Joined them as an apprentice, continued studying, doing things around telecommunications, but also the way it was structured then was 3 weeks working, 1 week at college. And so I did that. I think it lasted about a year, and then the whole world collapsed from a technology perspective. I actually got made redundant from that at the age of about 18 or 19.
That was the .com bubble bursting, was it?
Yeah, exactly. So then after that, I went to British Telecom. I did have a couple of temp roles in between, just random stuff. But then I did an apprenticeship with British Telecom in the UK. Similar thing. It was 3 weeks working, 1 week a month studying. So went to a different college, Stoke-on-Trent College, did some studying there, again with telecoms. And then when I completed that, I was in full-time working, right? No week per month of college.
Yeah.
And from there, I wanted to maintain my learning, right? So at the time, I thought, what was I interested in when during those college periods? What was interested to me, and it was networking, right? Computer networking. And so back then, I started studying for a CCNA. I think Cisco Certified Network Associate.
Yeah.
So I started doing that. I think it took me probably about a year or two. I can't remember exactly. And during that time, I was still hungry for more. I still wanted to keep learning. And the kind of natural progression with Cisco certifications at the time was the associate and then the professional, and then you get the expert, right? So at the time, I was like, I'd love to get to CCIE. That'd be amazing. It might take me another 5, 6, 7 years, but something to aim at. But as I was learning a bit more, I realized Cisco offered a CCSP, which is the security profession. Obviously, that means something different now. It's like cloud.
Yeah. It's the CCSP. Yeah, it's the ISC2's cloud one, right? Along with CSA. Yeah.
Exactly. So I started studying for that. And that at the time was made up of, I think, like 5 modules or 5 areas, whatever it was called. And so I went through that. Again, that took me 2 or 3 years, maybe. I can't remember. But right towards the end of that, I'd maybe done 3 or 4 modules and I had 1 or 2 left. And that's when I actually moved over to the States. So I finished my CCSP actually when I got to America, into California. And that was it, really. That was my initial break into the InfoSec world, was actually doing the Cisco CCSP. And when I came over to the States, my first full-time job here was with Experian, and I worked as a SOC analyst in the GSOC. And when I was going for that job, I can't remember how I learned it, but I heard of a CEH, Certified Ethical Hacker, and I was like, oh, that sounds cool. It just sounds so. Again, self-studying for that, went through that process, got that certification. And then when I joined Experian, the certs, the experience, all that started rolling together. So I stayed at Experian for a few years, working in the SOC for 3 or 4 of those years, I think. And then probably for the last year and a half or so in my Experian days, I moved into a more business side security analyst role. So instead of being a security operations analyst, it was more of a security analyst where you're doing vendor reviews. The company wants to implement a new tool or a project and they need like a security perspective on it to make sure that they're doing it right, that type of thing. So those years at Experian were really my foundation, right? The 5, 6 years, I just learned loads. And a lot of it was self-learning, but a lot of it was on the job learning. But that's really where it kicked off. And from there, I've gone to different companies.
Let me stop you there for a second, because I'm interested in a few things there. Me and you have a very similar background, first of all, right? So I did my GCSEs. I then got my A-levels, math, physics, and chemistry, but I didn't go to university. I did similar. I went into work. I went into selling conferences, actually conference space over at Heathrow Airport. We're very close from the similar sort of area. And eventually I ended up from there into tech recruitment. I did a little stint while I was doing the conference sales, working as their IT assistant. So I touched a little bit on tech, just building internet, like a little internet cafe for them and turning it off and on, basically. That was as far as I got. That was my skill set. But it's interesting. I wonder how much I would love to, I doubt there's any data anymore, but I would love to be able to go and jump on the old system that my old recruitment company worked for, because we were based in Maidenhead, which was just down the road from Reading. We covered all of the Thames Valley, and I was working very diligently in tech recruitment back then. And so I bet that we've probably connected at some point or spoken. We did stuff with Nortel. My dad actually I tried to get in with BT because my dad worked for the whole of his career for BT, but he was on the literally cabling side of things.
That's funny because Nortel Networks is based in Maidenhead, right off the A4,
yes,
right, which is where I was for part of it. Same thing. My dad worked for BT for his whole career, 34 years or so.
Got nothing when he retired. He was an apprentice at 17 and then retired, and he literally they might have given him a tie or something. It was terrible. Well, we never talked about this before. So how did you, just because there are a lot of people, we're going to talk about a lot of things which a lot of people probably would love to do. I bet there's a whole bunch of probably people that don't live in the States that would love to come and work over here. There's probably a lot of people in the States would like to go and work in Europe maybe at the moment. So, there's a lot of that. How did you end up, I've got my own story of how I ended up over here, but how did you end up making that move and getting over? Because it's not as simple as it sounds for most people, right?
No, it's not. It's definitely not. I feel like it's probably harder now than it was when you and I did it, to be honest. I've been here, I think I'm about 19 years this December, I think I am. So it's probably a lot easier back then. Originally, I met my now wife in England. She was actually born here in Los Alamitos, California, but her mum is English. And so she spent a lot of her time between England and California. And so we met when she was over there, got together, did a bit of long distance, got engaged, got married, got engaged, moved over, got married, I should say. That's the correct order. So in a way, it was
just in case ISIS listening to this,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. I guess that's easier. I'm not suggesting everyone goes and does that for green card purposes, but it's probably easier, a genuine, legitimate path like that than it is to try and get a work sponsorship these days. And I'm not a specialist in that, but it does seem that trying to get a sponsorship is a little bit more tricky over the last few years.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I think especially the last few years where there's been quite a few layoffs and there's more people from the States that are here looking that maybe have green cards and are US citizens. Part of getting a visa is distinguishing the skill set you're bringing over. They can't hire here in the country. So that's a challenge. I came over with a company, a UK company, or a company originally born out of the UK that had a US office. And so I did it that way and transferred across as one of their executive leaders. And so I came across on a visa and had internal knowledge that was pretty proprietary. So for me, it was, at the time, it was easier. I think it's probably a bit harder now. But yeah, it is a challenge. We get asked that question quite a lot. I really want to come and work there. I've read about the skills gap and this is what I do. But it is a challenge to get a H1 and get these other visas and come across. I do think the easiest ways right now is to work for a company that gives you the opportunity to do that. It's probably still the easiest way to do it. Or fall in love with an American or vice versa and marry them. I joke because I was a US citizen when I married my wife. So I always say that she married me for her green card, despite us both being from England originally. Probably shouldn't do these jokes in public on podcasts, maybe. Some people take some stuff way too seriously, right?
Totally.
But that's good. Yeah, it's a long journey. And so you came over here straight to California when you were working over here in the SOC?
Yeah, exactly. Orange County, California the whole time. Landed Huntington Beach, then we went to Orange for a little bit, then to Irvine, and then Anaheim Hills. Especially in the grand scheme of American things, it's hardly moved basically. But yeah, it's been great. It's hard to beat Orange County.
Yes, it's like Reading on the Sea, really, isn't it?
Identical.
I love Orange County. Obviously lived for a long time in SoCal. And whenever I come over there and see you and see my other friends in Orange County, I always do feel that tug of the weather's perfect. The beach is right there. It's a great place to be. Look, so you went through, you were working in a SOC. You then went into more of the out of the operations and more into the business side of things. Yeah. Tell me more about your career from there.
Yeah. So I might forget the order of it, but
when was your first leadership role? Like team leader or manager?
That was probably around 2017. So I went from, at the time when I was at Experian, they wanted to, again, I feel like I go through all these financial crisis situations, but
we all did.
Back there, They wanted to, looking at moving the majority of the IT function to their location in Allen, Texas. I was offered an opportunity to relocate, and I gave us some money for moving expenses. And I spoke to the wife about it, and it was no.
We're not giving you. It's an easy no. Yeah, Texas or the beach here in Orange County. Yeah,
you said. But then I moved over to AAA, which literally a next door neighbor. They're 5 minutes away from where Experian's at. And then there, I think I was an InfoSec engineer there. Then I did some consulting with Productivity. Yeah. And then from there, moved over to, they're called Reliance now, Reliance Steel and Aluminum, or Aluminium, I should say, because I'm in the right presence here. I was an InfoSec engineer there as well. And that was my first stint with them, because I left there for the first leadership role. And that was with a smaller company, about probably 600 people max around that time. And I took on the first leadership role, VP of IT and security. It feels like I haven't really progressed now in the last 10 years. Now I have the same.
Type don't tell the whole story. That's why we do this podcast.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that was the first time. So I think that was around 2016, 2017, first leadership role. And from there, yeah, it's been a couple more leadership roles on that. But, and I say my first stint at Reliance, I stayed in that first leadership role with Incipio Group for 3 years, and they ran into challenges. And so I ended up going back to Reliance in a leadership role. So that was fantastic. I was there for 5.5, 6 years or so in that leadership role.
Question about, so when did you move straight into a VP role? It's obviously a smaller company, but were you InfoSec engineer straight into a VP role? Because obviously that's, in title anyway, that's obviously quite a big jump. And that's a challenge that a lot of the people who will listen to this, and a lot of people we speak to have, like getting that first management job is a tough gig. And even more so, I would say, when you're moving jobs, because you've got internal people competing for the job. You've got external people that are already managers, right? But is that how you moved to there? And if so, what do you think were the things that helped you do that?
Yes, it's a good one. And actually, this is probably going to tie into other questions later on, I'm sure. And I'm just going to be harping and preaching to the choir here, but network. To be honest, from that individual contributor role at Reliance, and then you're like a relatively huge jump, right? In terms of title, at least. But you're talking about Reliance as a Fortune 250 company, and you're talking about a company that's hitting maybe 600 people max, right? Mm-hmm. That's a huge difference. And to your point you just made, titles mean different things, different places, right? So the reason I got the opportunity was I knew the founder and the owner of that company. He knew me as well. So we knew each other. He knew what I could. It wasn't just a kind of like, hey, I know you, here's the job. It's kind of, he knew that I could do that job. And I got lucky, and I know that. And I appreciate that he gave me that opportunity. And once you get that title, regardless of where it's at, like company size wise, that is really your foot in the door. And yeah, like I said, I told people in my career, I said, there's an element of luck to everything, right? Hard work does pay off, but there's no one that's made it all the way purely on hard work, right? It just doesn't work like that. 90% hard work, 10% luck. And you might have one of those jammy mates that has 10% hard work and 90% luck. But
yeah,
at the end of the day, it's a mixture of, or a combination of both, right? I was fortunate at the end of the day to get that first role.
The thing is, and you're not the only one that talks about this, but I do hear, I have quite a lot of the people talk about luck. And I always say stuff like make your own luck, and luck is when timing meets preparation and stuff. But I am a believer that when you do start looking back at that, the luck of getting that is to do with the hard work you've put in. It is to do with how you're viewed by people and like how you act around people, right? It's good. And I know you're somebody that does this as well, but good management and look at the people they've worked with before, right? It's so common for people to bring in staff that they've hired elsewhere again to work with them because they enjoyed working with them. They know they can trust them. They know they can do the job, right? And so networking is so important. And we'll call it luck, but the truth is that luck, usually when people are talking about luck, they're being quite modest about a lot of the other stuff they were doing in the background to make that luck happen, right?
Yeah, that's true. I guess I'm too Britishly humble to say that. But I got that obviously as my first kind of big boy title, so to speak. And then Reliance were looking for a director of InfoSec. And I left there on good terms. The people I worked with, not just within the team, but other teams, the hiring manager who was essentially the CIO. And yeah, she gave me the opportunity at the end of the day. I got hit up by someone else. They said, "Hey, I've heard you're on the market." And I was like, "Yeah, let's have some lunch, whatever." And it all panned out, the interview process and stuff. So again, it's that element of luck. But I think to your point, it's there. That opportunity wouldn't have been, that lucky opportunity wouldn't have been there if I didn't make the right impression the first time round. And I feel like that was probably an even bigger element of luck to it, because saying you've worked for a Fortune 250 company at director level or above, it's a nice gold star on the resume, right? There's a different, like you say, like a director at a Fortune 250 versus a VP at 500 employees. Titles don't mean anything when you look at it like that. Again, there's an element of luck to it, but it was all a good experience.
Yeah, good. Okay, and then moving on from there, starting to get towards where we are now.
Yes, yeah, we're getting closer. So then after leaving Reliant, that was when I got my first CISO or CISO title. And that was with TP-Link.
Yeah.
So I headed up there. The same thing, actually. What I found is, apart from the Reliance role, it's always kind of like IT and security, at least for me. I know it's not true everywhere. So I went to TP-Link as their CISO and overseeing the IT technology department as well. And then after that, I'm where I'm at now. So I've been with Virgin Galactic 7 and a bit months, joined there late last October. And that's it. That's my 20 years in a nutshell.
You're making it seem very straightforward and easy. And I know that there's going to have been some ups and downs in all of that sort of process. We've known each other for a long time. We've worked together for many times. I've seen and been there through a lot of that stuff. If you look back at your whole career now, were there any sort of points where you could say that was like a major inflection point, or that was a hockey stick like moment for me? Yeah, when you look back, or even challenges where you've looked and you said, I've taken a step back at this point, but I took that because these were the moves I needed to go forwards.
I don't know. I wouldn't say so. There's certainly been lateral moves, but I'm not sure about taking step that, like the catapult, right? Pulling it back to excel. Not for me. I wouldn't say so, but definitely lateral for sure. But I guess in a way, there's that expectation that lateral move will eventually propel you further. I wouldn't necessarily say for me, the pullback. It's more of the sideward with the expectation of trajectory.
But I think even that sideward's it's a good point to talk about, right? Because most people will have that, right? It's really common. And I think some people feel like every career, like their career is continually moving forwards. And if they're not moving forwards, it's not successful, or it's not the right move, or these are some of the things when we're talking to candidates about, like they're consciously thinking about that, when actually lateral moves can do a lot of good for you to get you set up. And some things that look like a move back or a lateral move on when you start taking on board things like company sizes, right? And the amount of interaction you get, or like the stuff you're dealing with at companies, right? Some companies are dealing with all sorts of different issues and different problems, or in different industries. And that builds up a whole lot of experience that many other people won't get to go through.
Yes. Which I kind of think you had to answer that.
I guess it's not really a question, really. I'm making a statement there, aren't I?
Yeah, I know.
But you talk through being like a consultant, like at times you were consulting, right? And That's an interesting part even to talk about, because at some point I was helping as a tech recruiter. I helped build consulting teams, so we did a lot of contractor work. And here in the States, you don't tend to see. We're starting to see now in the current market, starting to see more contractor roles come up, more consulting roles come up. And that might be because there are more people available because of layoffs and stuff like that. And so people are being a little bit more open-minded about the type of work they take. But I feel like you can learn a lot through those contracting roles, and you have to be ready to really jump in and learn new things and grab new environments and connect with people very quickly. So I think that's often quite a good learning point. I don't know whether stuff that you went through there's any particular stories or anything at all that you can think of that's worth sharing.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely echo the sentiment there that when I was doing consulting, you just learn so much. You just do, because you can get a call on a Friday night from the boss. You got to be in such and such state by Monday morning, 8 a.m., right? And you don't really have any background. It's just, hey, we need a security assessment. It's a little bit vague, but you're pushed into the fire. And sometimes that can be scary. It is scary, but you have to learn so quickly. And being a consultant, even if you did it for a year or 2 years or 3 years, you gain so much knowledge. Compliance, operations, the whole thing, right? So there's definitely very good advantages to being a consultant. Obviously, it can be hard if you have a young family and you got to travel all the time. So it's not for everyone, but maybe that's my advice to the younger generation, right? If you want to learn quickly, you want to learn a lot, give it a go. Before you have kids, before you get married, before you own a house, before you have commitments, spend the time traveling, get to see the world, or at least America, and get that experience, because you just learn so much. Not that you don't learn a lot from going into an individual company, right? You absolutely, company does things their way, right? When you go to 10 different companies, you now see 10 different ways to do the same thing. So you just have a lot more of a broader perspective, and then your ideas become more valuable, right? Say, I've seen it done this way, wasn't very good. See it done that way, fantastic. So now you're providing a lot of value to the business just from flying around the country.
You're right. There is a point in your life. You can only do that for certain points. So we see a lot of that. We'll see candidates that come to us when they're working for consulting companies, and they're like, look, I loved the travel. I've learned an awful lot, but I'm now looking to settle down. And some of those people, I will take a lower salary to enable me to not have to travel quite as much, or I don't mind traveling, but I only want to travel this much of my time because I have a family, I've got commitments now, and I need to be more stable. So yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunities in doing that. I definitely think people need to be very open-minded, and the way you describe it is also probably the time in and around now is also the sort of time where you can do the consulting, or even the time to think up ideas, use AI and start building businesses, right? Utilize what you've learned in your career so far. And same, if you're able to make that jump and do it, then now could be exactly the right time to do that. I want to also think about if you think about the last sort of few jobs that you've had, your career moves, Reliance, that sector has been crazy recently, right? So you've worked in some really interesting industry sectors. The role at TP-Link to be building a brand new US headquarters and a full cybersecurity team. Like, people dream of building something like that, cybersecurity and IT, like on a greenfield site, right? That's something that, with all the pressures that come with working with a company that are cutting off and building out from a Chinese company, that stuff has probably been a lot where you can learn and build on that. And now you're in space. You're working in I feel like the stuff you're working in right now is the stuff that's all over the news. So how do you take all that different industries, and how do you apply, and what could you take from each one and apply to the next one?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's funny because I come back to the question, but I often see when you look at certain industries, they will literally only hire people with experience from that industry. And we probably all know what industries those are, right? And I always wonder why. When you do that, you're just hiring for the same mindset, right? The same ideas. And you're not necessarily gonna, as a company, you're not gonna change if you repeat what's already been done. I haven't, obviously to your point, I've been across many different industries, from whether it's space to steel manufacturing and fabrication, or home routers and IoT devices. But ultimately for me, I just feel that I know it's different, and I'm going to probably contradict myself by saying this, but it's the same, right? It's still, you need to do the basics. I'm a big fan of just do the basics well. The fancy stuff is going to change by industry, but the basic stuff doesn't. I would say in terms of transferring the knowledge from one business or one industry to the next, it hasn't been that hard for me, only because, again, like you look at frameworks, right? Industry frameworks, and they can still apply to any industry. Now, it does get a little bit different when, like Natiki Link, for example, you're selling home devices globally, and now you're talking about data privacy laws across 100 countries. That's very specific, very different than just doing something here in the US. But again, cyber hygiene, I still think that is be good at the basics, understand the fundamentals, repeat. And as you go through, if you're fortunate enough to get into different sectors to get that extra experience, you pick it up, right? You're just transferring this knowledge, or you change the terminology and you change a little thing, and now it's the same. But I find the industry, more on the healthcare side, is I don't think they have that mentality. And maybe there's a reason behind it, right? I don't know. But I find that's one of the harder industries to get into and out of, because they just want the same experience. And I think, fair enough. But if you repeat what you've already done, you're not going to really progress.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a lot of like transferring knowledge and having different ideas, and we can certainly talk about diversity, and diversity within industry and diversity within experience has got to be useful, especially as a lot of ideas and a lot of industries can be further forward or can look at things from different angles, so they can bring that in. So yeah, I love that. Look, now is the good time for us to end part one. We're not going to go and pretend by changing shirts that we're going to record a different day for part two. But everybody out there, you're going to have to wait a whole week, whereas we're going to continue on to part two and record that now. Everybody else here is going to be waiting a week for that. I hope you have enjoyed part one. Adam, thank you for joining me so far.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, click the button, make sure you subscribe and everything, because then you'll make sure you get part two. So thank you, everybody, for joining me. Adam, me and you will continue our talk shortly.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you for listening to the Route to CISO podcast. If there's something you really want me to ask on the next episode, or if you're a CISO who wants to inspire the next generation, please reach out. I'll leave a URL to my LinkedIn profile, and make sure you connect and message me there. We're always looking for feedback, so please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.